Hello, Karateka. Thanks everyone for your beautiful videos every week. I'm really enjoying the whole conversation. I've asked a bunch of you if you're willing to allow these conversations to go, not public, but to be shared by our group. And everybody who's gotten back to me has been totally okay with it. So I think I'm going to go ahead and just send that link out. And if anybody isn't okay with it, then you can let me know and I can make yours private or what have you. Quite happy to maintain your privacy if that's what you prefer. But there's nothing anybody needs to feel anything less than really proud of in terms of the work you're doing. It's really fantastic. I'm certainly proud of the work that I'm seeing that everybody's doing. One of you had I thought an excellent question about the breath, or just maybe a general question, and like how to breathe in Sanshin and various things about that. And this practitioner suggested that I make a video on the breath in Uechi, which I'm delighted to do. And you know, I am the rank I am, but I'm not any more advanced than that. And I make no apologies. If what I say right now contradicts something I said before, well, I wasn't as advanced as I am now. I changed my mind. And that whole growth thing is inevitably, the only way you can grow is to change. And so I've changed a lot. And I intend to change even more. So talk to me again in 6 months or 6 years, and I might well have a different take on things. But this is where I'm totally, at this moment with the breath. It's kind of fun, and I really appreciate the question, and that anybody would be, concerned about that and care about it. There's something about the breath that has kind of almost a mystical quality when you think about doing traditional martial arts or any Asian practices, meditation, that there's something magical about the breath. And it is, I would say that it's kind of one of the great gifts of the East to identify the breath as a place for attention. It's one of the sacred objects of attention for meditation. If you're going to put your attention in a particular place, where would be a good place? Well, the breath is one of those places. One of the big people in our teaching lineage, George Manson, identified the breath. He put it as the link between the physical and the psychological, which I think is quite an interesting take on the breath. It's very personal. If we're simply paying attention to the breath, which is sort of like level 1 meditation skills, is just be aware of the breath and maintain awareness of breath. But because the breath is always there, it's always present moment. Right? And so you've always got the breath to hang on to as a present moment event. And that includes whether you're holding your breath or what have you, you're still in a state of breath of one kind or another. There's essentially 4 cycles to the breath. There's in, holding full, out, and holding empty. So there's those 4 places in the breath. The Ashtanga yoga thing emphasizes the breath in a very specific, very controlled way, and that the sounding of the breath in Ashtanga is, I would say, meant in part to actually strengthen the breathing apparatus. And when you think about the immediacy of the breath, like how long can you go without food or water, or how long can you go with other essentials? How long can you go without breathing? It's not very long. Like it's an essential, current moment necessity to breathe and to maintain life. And so it kind of follows that if I can breathe better, if my breathing apparatus is stronger, if my function is better, then I'm having a better life. That might be an overstatement to some degree, but at least my life is supported in a better way. I could still be a really nasty person, I could still have really bad intent, I could still be beating myself up, but I've got some more fuel to do it with. Hopefully we can channel that, that good energy into other things. So the problem with talking about the breath in a Qigong or martial arts context is that when we think of breathing, we think of this literal motion of air in and out of the body, which of course that's what breathing is. But there's 2 aspects that we can understand as being separate for the actual movement of air. One is that when you're breathing in, your body is in a state of inhale. And if you're doing Qigong practice, particularly still practice, if you're just going to stand here and just breathe, if you bring your attention to how does my body feel when I'm inhaling, and how does it feel when I'm exhaling, and is it different, you'll notice that, yeah, it's really different. And the trick is that you can get to those states and change state really just by thinking in or out. You don't actually have to be moving air. That's kind of a secret of martial arts. And so we can notice that maybe a yielding block works better on an inhale, and a strike works better on an exhale. And that's true. So I can breathe in, go, but now my movements are limited to how quickly and how efficiently I can move air. So I can bring air in, but can I turn it around and get that air out as quick as I need? And what do I have to do next? Do I need to hit again? Have I used up all my air? Am I done now? And I don't have any air, air left to hit with? Or do I need to suddenly yield again, but I'm so strongly committed to the exhale that I have to kind of turn that around? It's very slow, it's cumbersome. It's a good beginner place to be, but the truth is that you can think in, out, in a flash. You can go out, in, just be in that state of exhale, which has kind of a compressing, I don't know how to describe it. I mean, you can find out for yourself, just pay attention. But it's obvious that, going out, you want energy to be moving out. And yeah, you can go, or all these kinds of things, but it's very primitive, and it's very, it drains your body of energy. You'll get tired. Stand in a room, go, gah! And just see how you feel at the end. You're going to feel dissipated. But if you're simply going, you're going to feel great. You're going to feel like, I wouldn't recommend doing it before going to bed. You're going to feel too energized, right? And so that's maybe the most useful and practical thing that comes from a more esoteric understanding of the breath. That there's a sense of inhale and exhale, and you can do that. You can have that feeling, and you can change it in an instant, as fast or faster than thought. Okay, so that's a big resource for us. And so we talk about, not in Sanshin, I'm going to get that in a second. In Sanshin, in other kata from Sanshin, we talk about, allowing a little air out through the nose. And again, I would say that's an intermediate stage. So beginner stage, right? Okay, great. Intermediate stage, just release a little air. Advanced stage, don't use your air at all. Separate this thing from the movement of air in and out of the body. It's not about air. It's about the sensations that we associate with those cycles. And you can get all that going on. You can go, I can be sending energy out. I can be in a state of exhale regardless of what my lungs are doing. My lungs can be breathing in and out. I can be breathing in as I'm sending energy out. I'm in a state of exhale even as I'm talking. It's independent of my actual physical breath. Okay, so that's the advanced level, and I highly recommend it. If you're in the black belt ranks, I'd highly recommend you get to that. Like, don't stay in like, this is very primitive, and it's hard on you. It drains you of energy. And I remember one time when I was first learning Koling Silk from David Mott Sensei, and I was kind of going, I can't remember what the movement was, but I'm going like, I was making all this sound. And David said, if the breath is harsh, the movement will be harsh. So if the breath is rough and ugly and uncontrolled and lacks refinement, just kind of, well, then the movement is going to be the same. It's not going to be better than that. So there's real possibility for fine-tuning and endless potential for growth by working with the, what's referred to as the breath, when we're talking about qigong. So qi means breath, right? Well, no, actually, qi is associated with breath, but it's not inextricably linked to respiration. Okay, so let's talk about another aspect of breathing. This gets us closer to San Shin and questions around San Shin. We have this breath called the hissing breath, right? So let's talk a little bit about what that is, and maybe let's talk about what it is we're trying to do with it, and then about how we make the breath rather than the other way around. And typically in traditional practices, you're told how to do something, and you're not told why you're doing it, which can be a little bit frustrating. But it's like, well, that's because you get to figure that out on your own. And your answers to these fundamental questions are going to be different from other people's answers, and that's good, so we have a conversation. So what I'm telling you is not stuff that anybody's taught me necessarily. I've just been told to work with the breath. So this is what I came up with. So anyways, if you're going to pick up a heavy object, you're going to pick up this chair, I can hurt my back, right? It's okay, we're going to say, well, get your legs bent and blah, blah, blah. But most of us, instinctively, if you're going to do something, you're going to push a car or lift a heavy object, you're going to go, right? And what are you doing? You're doing something called the Valsalva maneuver, where you're basically cutting off the air here at your throat in order to create downward pressure in your pelvis, which is going to stabilize your lower back and protect all the stuff that's likely to herniate or get damaged by taking on a load that you're not accustomed to, right? And this is a good thing. But that and you'll see that maybe in people in a you've had too much alcohol, so go ahead, give me your best shot, hit me as hard as you can, and they're like, and you just wait for them to take a breath, and then you hit them, right? So the hissing breath, what the hissing breath does is set that up, but again, independently of the actual breath. So you're using the breathing mechanism to create that function, which is that Valsalva maneuver, by the way, is used in childbirth and defecation sometimes or whatever. So that downward pressure, it stabilizes the pelvis for movement, and we want that in San Shin. But we don't have to go like this in San Shin. That's not good. Your face turns purple. Like, this is not going to work for you for the long term, right? So how do we do it? Well, we can go, and you can get whatever a grunt gives you. You can release the throat so you can speak normally, and you can maintain all of that. That's happening. I'm ready to go. I've got this strong San Shin base. I can talk, and so I'm not using the closing of the throat to create that. Now there's an added element that the breath brings in, and that is that the tongue is pressing, not really hard, but it's making some contact, and you yourself can discover how hard that needs to be. Like anything else, it can be not hard enough, or it can be too hard. There's a right amount of pressure. The tongue just on the hard palate, just behind the top teeth, and that creates a sense of a line down the front of the body, and it seems to kind of hold this in. And it's held in, but it's not held in like that. It's a little looser than that, right? David Mott Sensei described it as a half inflated or semi-inflated basketball. That it's got a little bit of give to it, but it's not easy to move. It's there, right? That's what we're after. And you can do that, and you can hold it in place. So the breath itself, now so that's what's going on. Now we're in San Shin in a sense. On some definition, the San Shin just means I'm doing this thing with my respiratory system. I'm creating the effect of the Valsalva maneuver without cutting off my air at the throat, so I can still breathe normally. And I'm using this hissing breath to actually support this even further from a Qigong perspective. So the tongue's on the roof of the mouth, and it's there all the time, right? Through any martial arts stuff that we're doing. And in fact, that's where your tongue should be resting unless you're breathing through your mouth. And you shouldn't be typically breathing through your mouth. You should be breathing through your nose unless you're out running or something and you get to the point where you need to start bringing the mouth into it. And even then, it should be in through the nose, out through the mouth as long as you can manage it. And then at a certain point of exhaustion or just stress, now you're panting. And that's fine. That's what you should be doing at that point. But for our purposes, we're breathing only through the nose, except that we exhale in the hissing breath through the mouth and immediately in through the nose. So the idea is that you're standing around minding your own business, somebody throws a punch at you and you go, right? So you immediately initiate, so you start your kata by going, you initiate with an exhale, followed immediately by an inhale through the nose. But that exhale is setting up that Valsalva maneuver, right? So you're in Sanshin for the rest of the duration of your practice, but you're not holding your breath. It's independent of actual respiration, if that makes any sense. Now, in Sanshin, Sanshin is a special case. Sanshin is not like the other 8 kata. It's quite different. When George Mattson traveled to China and demonstrated his kata as a pretty newly minted black belt, I understand, he went to China to kind of discover some of the roots of the Wei Qi system. And I guess he was treated really nicely, and he did his kata, his Sanshin in particular, for various people. And one person said, "Who taught you this Qigong practice?" And George said, "Oh no, it's not Qigong, this is the martial arts practice." And the guy goes, "Yeah, okay, fine. No, it's Qigong." And speaking of George, he's made tremendous contributions. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for George Mattson doing this work. I'm sure we'd be here, but we wouldn't be doing Wei Qi. He published a book when he first came back to North America, and there's a longer story there. He actually got quite ill for, I think, over a year, and then got back into practice, and he was practicing with somebody who'd also practiced overseas, but a different style, and they kind of mixed and matched unconsciously. And anyways, George published this book, and he was saying that in Sanshin that you should be breathing on the Kimai points. And I guess the Yokonamas were just like, "What are you talking about? Like, that is so wrong, not even close." Like, there's lots of room for variation, but they had no time for that. That was just like, no, that's wrong. And the same thing for us. We shouldn't be going and breathing there. But didn't I just say that that's how we extend energy, by letting air out, or feeling the extension of the breath in the exhale and maybe inhale here? Yeah, but in Sanshin it's different. Sanshin, we're actually compacting energy. So we use that hissing breath, which is a stabilizing breath, and never goes at a Kimai point. And even here, it doesn't go, it goes, right? So after you've reached the point of stillness, then you take that breath to further stabilize. And we can do that anywhere in the system. You can go, just stabilizes the whole thing. And there's a bunch of different ways of applying that to Sanshin. You can, that can be the only breath you take, which is a very powerful way to practice. You're going to feel really energized by doing that. You're going to feel compacted, and that might be, depending on who you are, if you've already got a lot of energy in your body, especially if you have a lot of energy in your head, it might not be a good idea for you to only go So that's the only breathing I'm doing. And that's good. That's a legitimate Sanshin practice. Another way to do it is to go, and now, right? Obviously I don't mean for you to make that sound. I'm just making the sound so you can hear that. I'm just breathing normally. And if I happen to be out of breath, maybe I'll be doing a lot of breathing. That's fine, right? But it's independent of my movement, and I'm not going, right? That's another way to breathe in Sanshin, or for the rest of the kata. Ultimately, the respiration part is separate from the two things that we identified. One is this Valsalva maneuver. We're using the respiratory system to create this stability in the lower part of the body that we associate with being in Sanshin, which doesn't just mean Sanshin, it means any karate that you're doing, that's where you should be. That's a respiratory function, that's a breath function, but it's independent of actually moving air in and out of the lungs, right? We also talked about the compression and expansion of breathing in and breathing out. Obviously we expand when we breathe in, but there's a sense of yielding in that expansion. And there's also a sense of compression, but sending energy out on the exhale. And that's also independent of actual air moving in and out. It's a very useful way to learn that by actually moving air back and forth, but we need to go from a gross experience of that to a more subtle experience that we're moving less air to where you're not moving any air at all. Again, back to San Chin, you're just breathing independently of what we're using for breath. So when we say breath, we don't mean respiration, right? Necessarily. Although we can start with that. We can start with respiration, and we can go back to respiration. We get to start with respiration right here. So now the respiration and all the sensations we were just talking about are all contained, all together. There's no separation, and we can really experience that on whatever level we're capable of. And then we can bring that here. But now the hissing breath brings that Valsalva stability and groundedness. And you don't exhale here. And I would say not even internally, not Qigong wise, you just hold your place, and the body is like trying to send energy out, and the way we're practicing San Chin actually keeps everything in. So the more I do this, the more I'm building energy in my body. It's all, I'm building energy. Whereas if I'm doing another kind of a kata, like say I'm doing Kanchiwa, and I go, like I'm really sending energy out here. In this case, San Chin, I'm not allowing that release. So this would be releasing. And this is San Chin. I don't know if you can see a difference or not. It's a really big difference for my experience. So doing San Chin is a Qigong exercise. It's a martial Qigong exercise, no question about it. But again, we're not working with respiration, and we're not even using the subtle aspects of the breath to extend energy. We're just using the stabilizing breath, and all the movements are independent of breath, and therefore serve to develop the Dan Chen and pack the body with healthy energy that we can then throw around with a little more abandon as we get to the more advanced kata. I hope that's helpful, and I'm really interested in any questions or other people's perspectives, or how it's working for you, or how you see it. It's going to be different from how I see it, and I'm really interested. Thanks everyone. Keep practicing.